A new Gallup poll finds President Biden's approval rating hitting another all-time low. Only 38% of Americans approve of Biden. A whopping 59% disapprove of his performance. Joining me now, Washington Examiner commentary writer Tiana Lowe. Tiana, it's a little bit surprising it's not even lower in terms of his approval rating.
Yes, especially considering that it's clear that there is not really a floor with Biden among Democrats. You know, his own base does not have much enthusiasm for him. And crucially, he is losing those center voters that a lot of pundits after the 2012 election started really ignoring. You know, there was this idea that Obama could win in 2012 by maximizing turnout. Biden was supposed to bring the Democratic Party back to this idea of centrist voters, right? Bringing back out married mothers, bringing back out more, white women, bringing back out more, evening back out the score, demographically speaking, so that demographics aren't destiny. That's sort of been shot like crazy when you look at these numbers among Hispanics, who now on blank congressional ballots are becoming close to 50-50 voters. The fact that gender is becoming more predictive a measure for how someone will vote than race really undercuts Democratic odds, not just for the midterms, but also for 2024, no matter who's on the ballot.
Sean Duffy, jump in here. All Joe Biden had to do was nothing. When he took office, the economy was growing at a 4.5% clip, and inflation was 1.4% in December of 2020. But again, they had to push through these Looney Tunes achievements to what end? To create an economy that is contracting, to create an economy that is making Americans poorer because inflation's running at the fastest clip in 40 years.
Right. And when your ideas don't work, most presidents, most politicians will pivot and try something new because these policies have been so painful for the American people. But Joe Biden's not seeming to make that pivot. And Tiana mentioned Hispanics. The same thing is true with African Americans are starting to slide away from Joe Biden. African Americans not at the same number as Hispanics. But I wonder with Tiana, you're also hearing again about what's happening with women. And you're right, there's a gender divide between Republicans and Democrats. More men vote Republican, more women vote Democrat. But I'm curious, are we seeing more women leave the Democrat Party, especially after what's happened to their kids in schools and CRT and the transgenderism that's been pushed on kids? Have women started to leave as well?
So it's going to be bearing out. I'm really interested in these local elections. You know, if you look at like Elaine Luria, Abigail Spanberger, these like Northern Virginia elections, to see does that Youngkin momentum hold? Because a lot of Glenn Youngkin's victory in Virginia for governor last year was about those school closures. You know, like, is there sort of the 2022 redux of the security mom, but at this point it's the school mom? Again, the polls aren't everything. We do know that a lot of these polls skew more liberal, whether or not just an identification bias or whether or not it's a polling bias. But yes, I mean, I think that the public health establishment that has been, aligned with Democrats, just at least that's how voters interpret it, for however anyone wants to believe it, they made it clear that schools are not considered essential, and there will be an unfortunate comparison drawn between coronavirus school closures and preventative measures with the, monkeypox pandemic, endemic, whatever you want to call it. There will be a sort of concern around moms if you see a very muted public health response. Hey, so you're saying the teachers' unions are allowed to shut down the schools for 2.5 years? But right now, it's still education is a very huge predictive factor. Non-college educated women vote overwhelmingly Republican versus college educated women, who really right now are the base of the Democratic Party, which is why when you hear Jen Psaki say things like, go drink a margarita and take a kickboxing class, she's, signal boosting to 10 professors in Oberlin, not to, middle America.
There are plenty of people here in New York City who I think that would resonate with, sadly, rich liberals who actually aren't in New York City during the summer. They're out in the Hamptons. I digress, Tiana. I want to get your reaction to this before we go. A group of Washington Post opinion writers ranking the Democrats they think are most likely to win in the 2024 nomination if Biden doesn't run. Here's the list. Vice President Kamala Harris topping the list. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg coming in second. Governor Gavin Newsom, and then Gretchen Whitmer, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the list. Tiana, Kamala Harris didn't even make it to the first voting contest of the last nominating process, but now she's number one?
So identity politics has become such an anchor on how the Democratic Party functions. You know, you have this unfortunate dynamic where because of what the DNC did to protect Hillary Clinton in 2016, the Democratic base does have a rightful fear that there's too much top-down party control in terms of who wins a primary. However, will that control be exercised because the optics of unseating the first black woman to be the vice president, the first black vice president, the first woman vice president, would the optics of that be extremely uncomfortable if this isn't an open season primary? Now, here's the thing. I think the odds of this being an open season primary are kind of high. And the fact is, Pete Buttigieg is kind of well positioned. He is one of the only members of the administration who's willing to come onto Fox News, Fox Business. He's one of the only members of the administration who doesn't, frankly, embarrass the White House every single time he goes on television. He is a smart guy. I believe he genuinely cares. That being said, we saw just how anemic his support was among black voters, who are the base of the Democratic Party, among older voters. He is a white millennial candidate, and he has a white millennial base. So that would be concerning. The rest of that list, are we really? Gavin Newsom, the Gordon Getty's protege in California, AOC. Why can't Democrats learn how to pick someone from a state that isn't indigo blue with a base that's 20 points to the left of the rest of the country? I would say my shot in the dark candidate would be Democrats to start looking at Jared Polis, the Colorado governor.
Yeah.
But you know, they have their celebrity candidates, and unlike Republicans, they're very, very, very ineffective at building that backbench.
I'm gonna use that as an excuse, like I deserve advancement because I am not a screaming embarrassment.
Yeah,
I love that.
The bar is on the floor, Dagan.
Right. Hey, Tiana, thank you for being here, Tiana Lowe. We'll be right back.